So, if you are wondering, I am going to be talking about the Super Bowl probably on Tuesday's episode. I mean, I'm recording the episode you're listening to before the game because I'm going to be enjoying the game. And I just think it probably would be better to see what's going to happen rather than waiting and recording it after the game, if I'm going to be honest. So, today, what we are going to talk about is more statistics that are coming out from Tops Production BB, which is a phenomenal Twitter account that I definitely suggest following. They do a lot of tracking on how many like base cards there are and how many cards there are in Topps products. And they put out their numbers for Series 1, which the numbers that they put out do not include the factory sets, which I'm not 100% sure if the factory sets have like a distinction between them, between like the card numbers. I don't think they do. So, I don't know how many factory sets they're making, but so some of these numbers could be skewed a little bit potentially. So they are basically saying, because they put all of the different types of pack odds essentially into like an algorithm and then what spits out this number. And the number that they put out that this year in 2025, so 2025's top series one is going to have 1.1 million base cards for each individual player, and that is up from 2024. That's up about, it was 869,000, and then in 2023 it was 1.2 million. So we're still below 2023's number, but we're basically right up to 2023, the 1.184 million cards for each player. Again, this doesn't include the base set, or it doesn't include the factory set. So that's, I don't know. You probably can include another maybe 100,000. Maybe they made 100,000 base sets, and that's also kind of a large large estimate, I think there. But that's not. Although also the factory sets don't come out until Series Two is out, because I believe the factory sets are Series One and Series Two. And what I think essentially these numbers mean to me is I think that the numbered parallel, so the gold numbered parallel, and then the rainbow non-numbered parallel, I actually think are decent buys if you're looking to like invest in this type of product. I think overall the top series one is a product that is supposed to be one that you can find very easily. And something I sort of talked about with like Donruss, where I thought that Donruss could be this type of product, but over the past few years, we've really seen such an increase in the insert, the downtown insert that's in there. So I don't really think they could do that. But I think if you were to ask any random person about baseball cards, they would say like, "Oh, the flagship set," which they probably don't know what the flagship set is necessarily, but the flagship set I feel like is one of the more notorious cards, like because Bowman, I think, is the most important card, but also Bowman is really like a card that like you kind of have to be into sports cards to know about that card, really. Like when I was first getting in, I thought it was all tops like series one, series two, and tops update. I didn't even really, to be completely honest, when I was getting back into cards, I didn't even realize there was a difference. So like the Otani card, for example, I didn't know that there was a difference between like his series two and his tops update. Like I didn't know that like in that year too, like Acuna was a short print in series two and then had his first official card in tops update. I didn't know all of these things. So like the Bowman card, for example, that card is one that like you really kind of have to be into sports cards to know about that one. So if you're looking for a card that is very much mainstream, I wouldn't go necessarily with the base card. I would go with like the rainbow foil or the gold numbered to 24, or it'll be this year would be 2025. I don't know if like the odds are roughly the same for those cards, so you can kind of imagine that there probably is about the same amount of the rainbow foil versus the gold numbered cards. Like there's probably more of the rainbow foil. If I had to guess, I mean, there's probably 3 to maybe 4,000 produced for each player, where obviously the numbered cards are numbered, so we know how many there are. So if you are looking to buy any, I don't know. Again, I don't. it can be tough sometimes to say if you want to invest, but this is like a thing where the investment aspect of the product, there are cards within each product that I think are worth looking into from an investment standpoint. And an investment standpoint, I think also is just from I use the term investment not necessarily as in like buying and holding. I use the term investment as like making money, basically. I don't think the investing side of sports cards nowadays, I think, is so tough and I think is so random that it's worth looking into quicker flips that you can buy and sell. Um, I think if you were looking to invest in any of this type of product, I think it's really like maybe like if you're buying Top Series 1, I think selling it potentially right after the season starts is what you're going to want to go with and what you're going to want to do. I don't think you I don't think the opportunity is there as much as it used to be for like because we were going through an era in cards where like you could really buy any card and if they were even semi good, you could sell it for a 20 to 30 to 40, maybe even 50 or double per prop, you could profit. Nowadays, I think it's tougher because I think that there's so much more data, which is a good thing because it helps the market make better decisions. It may be decisions that lead to people who own the card making less money on them, but I do think that that is a good thing. I think the more data and the more information that the hobby has, the healthier it is because you are making a decision based on information that you know versus information that you're just maybe potentially guessing or maybe that like or it could just even be like maybe the other person knows the information than you don't. And that's another thing where I just think that we've seen such a drastic change in the market and um in how people view information and how much information there is. Like I think people view the information as much more important than they did in the past. And that notion then leads to companies like Card Ladder. It leads to companies like, GemRate. It leads to companies like Sports Card Investor with their with their market movers tool. It leads to all of these innovative products that help people make smarter decisions. And the other kind of interesting piece of it is that that's something that I've been sort of wondering recently is like there's still so many high value cards being sold that I'm wondering why I'm sort of wondering why because we're seeing sales that are still in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And sure, maybe there's less of those sales, but overall, we're still seeing a decent amount. So I'm just wondering where maybe some of the money is coming from or who is the one buying these cards. Because I think, on one hand, when we were in an era like in 2020, maybe even 2018, 2019, a lot of people were making money because people didn't really know what they were buying. I think nowadays you really know what you're buying, and I think you have to do the extra research from the buying and selling end of it to make sure you're making the right decision. Because I think, although yes, there is all this information, it is still very easy to trick yourself into thinking you're making the correct decision. But and I just think that's why like a Twitter account like this that's putting in all this data into the algorithm is so important because it's helping collectors know like, oh, there are whatever 1.1 million cards versus back in the day there were so many cards and people really just didn't know how many there actually were. To be honest, I think that was probably best case scenario for the Super Bowl last night. I mean, would it have been kind of cool to see Mahomes break a record? Like, yeah, maybe. As a Patriots fan, the Patriots never got blown out in the Super Bowl, so I really think we're gonna have to now probably wait another, hopefully 10 to 15 years, really, before we can start calling Mahomes, putting him in the conversation with Brady. Realistically, I think he has to probably, if he wins next year, that's going to be great, or that will be great for his legacy. Wouldn't be great for fans because I think the one thing that I was watching the game with my parents, and one of the things that my dad was saying was like he didn't really feel like there was much lead up to the Super Bowl, and it's like the Mahomes is playing in the game for the third time in a row, and it's the second time that essentially this Eagles team has played them. And if we're going to be honest, like the Eagles almost beat them the first time. Like it was like 38-35 back and forth in that one game. And, it really came down to like they call the pass interference, and that's what gave the Chiefs the championship there. Like, sure, there was other plays throughout the game, but it was like it came down to the Chiefs having the ball last, and they got a pass interference, which granted it should maybe it could have been worth it. But I think the game itself, from a sports card perspective, really all that it did was, I think it solidified that Jalen Hurts might be a good buy this offseason potentially. Again, I think what you're going to maybe want to do is sell before the season and then buy in the middle of the season, because Philadelphia, for example, they were like when they put the Philadelphia record up on the screen, they said they were like 15-2. I was like, wait, well, I was like, in my head, I remember seeing the headlines around Philadelphia this year, and other than Saquon Barkley, and I remember the headlines being like, what are the Eagles going to do? They're in so much turmoil. So it feels like the Eagles are definitely a team that are on edge at all times during the season. So like waiting and buying his cards during the season feels like Jalen Hurts, for example. I think that might be a decent strategy if you're looking to make some money buying and selling Jalen Hurts cards. I don't know. In this era, I think if you're taking the advice, or at least the money, I think comes from making your own decisions and not making decisions on what other people are saying. Because if I'm saying this, there's got to be hundreds of other people who are also trying to do that. So, it might be. I think the saying is something like something about a road less traveled. I don't know the actual saying, but I know it's something like that. I know that the sentiment of the saying is something a road less travel. I don't know exactly what it is, but yeah, and the game itself was very defensive, dominated by the Eagles. Really, I mean, they just had like they were just it was just clear that the Eagles were the best team, and it's actually kind of surprising that like it's kind of actually a little bit surprising that it was even that close of like a spread, and that people thought this was going to be that close of a game, or that even the Chiefs could win, because it really was not. From the first drive of the game, it wasn't close. It was 17-0 in the first quarter. Like it, obviously they have DeJean, who is a rookie, which I believe he would be in this year's products because he's a defensive player. I don't 100% know if he is going to be in um a lot of big products. I mean, he's a defensive back, so hopefully they include most of the rookies, but like there are 250 rookies, so it's like I don't know if Panini includes all 250. I feel like they might in some sets, or they might rotate out certain players, like depending on what product it is. Like Prism, I don't know if DeJean has any Prism cards necessarily, like if he's in that set or not. But I think that would be he'll be an interesting player to watch going forward as well. I mean, obviously the game plan for the Chiefs there was going to be stopping Saquon Barkley, which is what they did completely. Like they just which it was stop Saquon Barkley and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball and run the ball, because he did that as well pretty well. And they did that, but they really, other than stopping Saquon Barkley, it seemed like they didn't really have a great game plan around what they were going to do. Like it seemed like it was just stack the box and then hopefully our one-on-ones win. But it's like when you have yeah, AJ Brown and Devonta Smith and Dallas Goddard, and I mean, even if you toss Barkley out there, like you have 3 or 4 players that you can throw to. If they're in single coverage, you have probably a 50-50 shot that they can be open. Which the other interesting thing that happened last night that I saw this stat. This was a pretty wild stat that Devonta Smith was the first Alabama player, or the first player to be drafted from Alabama to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That seemed like an insane stat. Like I'm wondering if, and that could be because Alabama is usually pretty good, so that way the good players are going to bad teams in the draft. So realistically, that could be why those types of stats exist. Realistically, also because a lot of it's a lot of quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks are going to bad teams. So I don't know. It was so defensive heavy. I don't think any prices are going to skyrocket. Like Barkley has still had one of the best running back seasons of all time, and now he's a Super Bowl champion, so that's great for him. The 2018 Prism product still, I think, probably the best football modern product of all time. I think 2020 Prism could be still very good also. There's just going to be a lot of that product. Like I believe that's the first year that we saw the jump the way that Prism basketball jumped from 2017 to 2018 was 2020 Prism football. Like if you look at Kyler Murray, who was 2019 versus like Joe Burrow or Jalen Hurts. Like I believe Kyler Murray is still in the 2 to 3,000 PSA 10s, where like Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow are in the 5 to 7,000, which is still low. But I think honestly, there's still going to be a lot of those cards that are going to get graded there. The only really big sports card thing to come out of the game, in my opinion, was that the the 1 of 1 Paul Skeens card was there with Livy Dunn and Paul Skeens were at the Fanatics party, and they had a little photo op with the 1 of 1 debut patch card. They said it was before it's going to be auctioned. I don't know if they've announced when the card is going to be sold or when it's going up for auction. I would imagine probably around opening day, if I had to guess. I'm not 100% sure there, but that card was photoed with Skeens and with Livy Dunn, and I don't know. It's a kind of an interesting thing there where athletes now are really getting involved in their own cards, but they're almost getting involved to now another level where it feels like a lot of athletes would post about signing a bunch of cards, or they'd post the cards that they're signing. But now it feels like these players are really they're they're getting invested also because the offer for the Pirates, which in retrospect is like this is smart of the Pirates to try and get the offer out there, and it went very viral. But come on, what are we talking about here? But it was also good on the Pirates because they said that even though they didn't take that offer, they're still going to do all of the meet and greets and all this type of stuff with Paul Skeens, and they're going to still do some of that stuff, which is that's very cool. Yeah, I'm glad that they're doing that. But in retrospect, you got to sell the card. You're selling that card. You got it graded. It came back at 10. And now they're selling it through Fanatics Collects, which I know a lot of people don't really like. But it's in retrospect, it just seemed way more obvious that you would sell that card for $1 million. I don't know how much I'm thinking it's probably gonna be around $1 million. It could be 1.5. I don't think it gets up to 2, but I would say it's probably around $1 million. But that's really the only other big story to come out of the game. I mean, we covered the game a little bit before, but I think overall there weren't really a lot of storylines, and I think unfortunately that led to not really many storylines from a sports card perspective from this game either. All right, so it is Topps Series 1 release day. Finally, we've been waiting since the end of the baseball season. I think pitchers and catchers are reporting this throughout this week. I know each team does it differently. But yep, Series 1. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about Series 1 tomorrow and then Friday, probably, just to see sort of what the marketing that's coming out, because we've seen up to this point Topps do a fine job at marketing the product. I think it's a product that is widely renowned as if you're looking for sports cards, and this is sort of one of the things I think is very interesting about baseball, is that anybody in my real life that I tell them that I do sports card content, they go, "Oh, like baseball cards." And I'm just like, "Yeah." Or or if I say sports cards and they don't know what I'm talking about, I say like baseball cards, and they most of the time they know what I'm talking about. So this is the product. This is the baseball product. So I think that they've been doing a fine job at kind of previewing the product on social media. I mean, it's not really a product that's going to have a crazy amount of hits or anything in there. So you're kind of just ripping this. This is a fun thing. You can probably buy a hobby box for fairly cheap. I believe hobby boxes straight from Topps were $80. I think they used to be around 60. So, a $20 increase because I bought the 2019. I believe I bought a 2019 hobby box on release day for 60 or 65 back in 2019, obviously, which is good and bad because it was good because I pulled a one of one Alex Bregman letter patch. It was bad because it was also on the day in June when the Bruins lost in the Stanley Cup. So again, kind of an interesting little memory there, which I think is also another interesting piece of cards in general is like there are memories attached to cards. So like if you're buying and selling, if you're attached to a card, there's probably a decent shot that you may not want to get rid of it. If it's a card that you're not super attached to, it might be easier for you to get rid of it potentially. So, or well, I don't know. I don't want to say get rid of it, but sell it. So that's kind of series one, at least for a little bit of a preview for that. Two things that I have found that tops have done that have been very, I don't know. I think I've used the word interesting a couple times on this podcast, but I'll use it again. Interesting. There is a post that they put out on Twitter that was about like the different one of ones that are still missing. Which there was a one of one Messi that they promoted. There was a one of one Superfractor auto of Mbappe from 2018 Topps Chrome Champions League, and then the Steph Curry one of one. And we have seen a bit of a big shift in the way that Topps has been marketing products in this way. Like, the acknowledgement of cards that are being pulled, or the acknowledgement of big cards that are being pulled in the sort of marketing of a product has not been something that Topps has done in the past. Like or at least at least done to the extent that we saw with like the debut patches. And, I think again, I think Topps has already made their money. So for them to shift this way in marketing is not affecting their bottom line. Is it affecting the bottom line of people who are selling the product and trying to make money on the product in the secondary market? I mean, yeah, potentially. Like, did the price of Topps Chrome go down because the Paul Skeens got pulled? I mean, it probably went down a little bit. I don't think necessarily it saw like a humongous drop off. Like, that was kind of the one thing that everybody was saying. Like, oh, now prices are going to plummet. They're going to drop. They're going to go crazy. I think we are in a point in the industry where the large drops that we've seen, the decreases in prices, excuse me, because drops could be used in different ways, but the large decreasing in pricing, potentially, or large decreasing in pricing quickly. Sorry, I always want to make these distinctions, and as I'm saying them, I want to make the distinctions. But I think the large decrease in price didn't really happen as much. I'm sure there was a bit of a decent decrease in Topps Chrome prices, but overall, I don't think we saw anything too crazy. And the other thing that happened this week, it was, I believe, Monday, was the pre-order for Topps Chrome football. And oddly enough, I'm not even really that upset about it that it's an unlicensed product because it's rookies from this past year. Like when Wembanyama was still getting products, and I know probably I'm hoping at least the last product. I don't 100% know if we have any more 2024 Topps basketball products left. I hope we don't, because again, we are halfway through the basketball season and Panini is still coming out with, Wembanyama rookies. So it's like, at what point do we just say we need to, I don't know. And I don't know who would step in here, but it's probably the Players Association. That's really the only entity that I could see being like strict on rookie cards. And like, I don't think they really care, if I'm going to be honest, because for them, the money's already been made. And this is sort of an interesting piece that I think sports card companies are potentially missing. Maybe they potentially don't care, but like once the money has been made on a product or a player or on a thing, it's like what happens after that is almost inconsequential. It almost doesn't matter to the companies. Like they don't really care that, at least I don't think they do. I mean, and maybe this is me projecting a little bit. It seems like they don't care of when products are coming out. So, at least, we are past the Super Bowl, unfortunately, but at least we are getting products from this past rookie class before the next draft. Because, if I had to guess, we'll still be getting the licensed football product from Panini after this next upcoming draft. Because the draft is in like it's only in like 70 days, which the NFL offseason, I think the NFL and NBA off seasons could rival each other in terms of the best off seasons because the combine is like a month away and free agency is like only a couple weeks away. So I think the staggered approach to this off season from for the NBA, they do that and the NFL. I think that they've done a really good job at being in the news cycle all year round. And I think, we did see the NBA here. They took over the news cycle of the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something come out, some sort of news or some sort of thing come out as we get farther along into the NBA season from the NFL, just as, I don't know, maybe like a get back or something like that. But we have, the big thing about this Topps football product is players like Bo Nix and I believe Jaden Daniels and I know Caleb Williams and Drake May. They are all Topps exclusives. I'm not 100% sure about Jaden Daniels. I know about the other three that they are. So they're all exclusive. So we're going to be getting some of their first rookie autographs out of this product. Are those unlicensed rookie products going to be as popular as maybe low numbered parallels? I think the conversation it's very similar to the Wembenyama. It's exactly the same with Wembenyama because he was a Topps player, so he had unlicensed Topps Chrome basketball products and uh, unlicensed but autographed. So like, is like the Drake May, for example, like is the Drake May one of one Topps Chrome Superfractor autograph going to end up being a more popular card than his regular prism? Like that's sort of a conversation I think that we will continue to see as Topps is taking over some of these licenses. It now looks like one of the biggest, I would say, biggest hobby shop brands in the industry is now half owned by Tom Brady. So it was announced by Card Vault, that is a Boston-based sports card. I don't know exactly what you could call them because I don't think it's necessarily like brand or they have a bunch of different. They do breaking. They have like shops. They are the ones that put on the sports card show at Fenway. They're like the main sponsor. They've done some great ones at Royale, no, not Royale. Big Time Live, which is like the concert venue next to the Garden. I've been to that one a couple times. It's a phenomenal show. I mean, all sports card shows are pretty good. I think they do a good job of entertaining and food and stuff. But now they are 50% owned by Tom Brady. And I think the interesting thing here is that they're switching like all of their branding to include Tom Brady's name in it, which I don't know whose idea it was. I mean, I guess it's maybe it's probably beneficial for both parties because now you have a big name like Brady included in your brand. Like they've already, and this was just announced like in the past day or so, they've already switched their Twitter handle to Cardvolt TB. Their Twitter name is Cardvolt by Tom Brady. They switched out their Twitter image to include Tom Brady's name in it. And they have a website that's Card Vault by Tom Brady. So I mean, this is like a huge move for Card Vault, which I would say Card Vault, if you're in the Boston area, it's probably one of the bigger sports card brands in the Boston area. Like I said, they put their names on a bunch of different shows, which have been phenomenal success. I mean, they did the show at Fenway Park, like which I went to that one. That was also phenomenal, and I did actually some PSA submissions with them, and that went pretty well. I mean, they're pretty smooth stuff. I mean, you don't get as much of the info, like you don't get like the tracking throughout the process the way that you do, which maybe that's something that they've changed since I did the submission. But if you're submitting directly through PSA, you get kind of like almost like the dominoes tracker of like each step in the process, which I don't know. I mean, at this point, PSA, each step in the process, it's not like, I think one thing that PSA should implement with that, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this is kind of a random thought that I think would be cool, is if they were to put like an estimated date. And I know that would then require them to completed by the date, but it's like if they have an estimated date where they're like, if everything should be included by this point, or it will be included by this point, not that it should be, because as soon as they start missing deadlines, that's where they're going to obviously get in some trouble there with some of the stuff that they're doing with, if they're whatever, not if they're missing dates. Obviously, that's not going to be good for customers, obviously. But yeah, so Tom Brady is now. I mean, Tom Brady is a half owner in my opinion, one of the bigger sports card brands in the industry. That's not a card shop, I guess is one way to put it. So that's pretty cool. Some other interesting pieces of information that have started to come out is the team sets and checklists for Prism basketball have started to release, and early checklists are saying there are going to be 81 parallels in 2024 Prism basketball. And again, I don't think that's something that's shocking. Like, I know people are like, I think some people are against parallels and some people like them. I think on one hand, I think adding the amount of parallels would be good if somehow the price of the boxes were not like super crazy, which that's actually another thing that I'm going to talk about in a little bit is the pricing of the boxes. If the pricing of the boxes weren't like in the thousands of dollars for like a hobby box, then like I would be fine with them having so many parallels and even blasters and stuff like that. I would be fine with that. But the fact that like they are just turning on the printers. And I think this year will probably be a down year for Prism basketball. If I had to guess, like I wouldn't expect to see the like 2, 3, 4, 5x return if you're buying any of these boxes at like retail. Like in the past, we've seen again the $20 boxes. I feel like was a good that felt like the right sweet spot. The $35 for a box, just you're not getting even close to the return on it, which again, I don't want to complain necessarily because I've done that in the past about these boxes and my issues with them. But 81 parallels, I think it seems like a lot, but like then you consider how much of the product there really is, and maybe it's not a like massive number. But the other piece of Prism basketball, which once that releases, I'm sure there'll be well, I don't know actually because this year's Prism basketball. I mean, unless Bronny is in the product, like that's really the only draw they have. Like, unfortunately, they lost Jared McCain, who was probably going to be one of the top rookies in that product. He is out for the season. I think he like tore his ACL or he had some sort of knee injury. Zach Edey, I guess, will be a good player in there, but um the rest of the draft picks are not looking so good. And so I don't know, if you are somebody who believes in the draft class, like potentially if you wanted to buy and hold any of the product, this is probably one of the only times you're going to be able to find the product for um not double or triple the price on the secondary market. Now, the reason could be that there just aren't any good players, like aren't any good rookies. But it's like if you end up, and this is a hypothetical, and I don't even know if I really suggest doing this realistically with this draft class, but if you buy and hold the product and any of the prospects really turn out to be very good, like you could be looking at like a 2013 Prism product. And you're also looking at potentially one of the last Prism basketball products as well. So I guess I don't 100% know if there's going to be Prism basketball this up next year. I imagine, I think that there will be because I think the way that it works is I forget the exact years. I know it's 1 year. I know it's next year is when Topps takes over either basketball or football, and then the next year is when they take over the other one that didn't start in. Oh, actually, no. Well, it's 2025, so I guess maybe it's the end of this year is potentially the last year of either basketball or football. I just forget which order it went in. But the other piece that I want to talk about here with Prism Basketball's release is that the WNBA Prism Basketball is actually selling for more than the regular Prism Basketball. Now, if you were to tell me that 5 years ago, I don't know what exactly I would say. I mean, I've kind of been a component for women's sports, so I mean, maybe I would be on the side where I'm like, I guess so. Like, I mean, I don't see how it could be, but if you were to tell me that 5 years ago, I wouldn't be like completely mind blown. But I don't know, the people who are maybe a little bit more surprised by this on social media, like I don't know if they're being legitimately surprised. Like the fact that like Caitlin Clark is like one of the most exciting athletes, and not even just female athletes. I think just regular athletes of this generation of basketball. So like you are getting her product, and like I said, this is going to be like this is going to be a crazy amount of WNBA Prism basketball. So like if you are buying her cards, for example, I think I saw some of the boxes were selling between like 1,000 and 1,200, and some of her first Prism cards were selling in the $600 or $700 range. I would say these cards probably get to 20 or $30 at some point. I mean, I think that she has the potential to be sort of a transcendent athlete in a sports card product, but I think overall I wouldn't be going out there and breaking the bank on these cards. I would obviously give it some time till there's more cards on the market. Until there's more cards that you can buy, because that's what's going to drive down the price. And ultimately, I do think that Caitlin Clark this year, I think her rookie cards, I think are good purchases. I would just be wary of the price that you're buying them at. Like, I think that we're going to look back in 10 years and there's going to not, we're going to look back in 10 years and it's going to be very similar to, looking at like the early years of Panini basketball, where there isn't a lot of the product and there aren't a lot of products in general. But the superstar level that Caitlin Clark has, and I think Cameron Brink and Angel Reese and all the other rookies that are in that product, that is the real reason why this product is higher than Prism basketball, because the draft class is so much better. And I think it's just, like I said, an athlete that I think people are way more excited of or excited for, which is what is driving up the price of those boxes. So overall, just be careful at what you're buying, but just know that, I think Caitlin Clark cards are going to be decent purchases 10, 20 years down the road, I think, depending on the price. With a topic like this, I feel like at this point it's probably beating a dead horse. So I'm not going to really focus on it too much. I'm going to be honest. It's just I saw something on Twitter today that I was like, oh, maybe I'll mention this in the podcast. And again, I don't know if it makes a huge difference one way or the other, but the promotion for the dual downtowns, the one that was like the debut image of this new set, used a different they use a different background. So I'm wondering, now I think what must have happened was they didn't get some sort of license for certain a city, or they didn't get license from a certain artist, or something that must have happened where they had to redo the whole set, and they just couldn't afford to redo the whole set. I mean, obviously paying an artist is expensive, but at the same time, it's like, come on, these are supposed to be art cards. And, I don't know, maybe it will be like one of the first sets that knowingly we knew used AI, and that's what's going to be like a cool insert in the future. I just think it's unfortunate that they couldn't find an artist there, but they used the Dak Prescott CD Lamb card specifically was like the image that they use for the dual downtown for the like we're premiering this product, and then the card is just a completely different card. So I don't know. That I feel like could be interesting. It I don't know. Maybe that's something to look into potentially. I don't know if it's like I don't know if it's against the law. Maybe it just seems weird that they were able to promote something and then that they just came out with something completely different. I mean, I don't know. It's just they're just promotional images, so maybe I'm looking into it a little bit too much here. But just another pet peeve of mine from this debacle, or I don't know, maybe from their standpoint, they're just like, hey, I mean, we got we got a good amount of promotion. We got a lot of free promotion because people were talking about it. I don't really know. I mean, that's what when I was talking to Dr. Beckett on the hobby hotline last Saturday, that was one of his points, was that even, no publicity is bad publicity, which I think is, that's a saying that's, in some cases I think correct. In some cases I feel like maybe I don't know, it maybe is hurting your the amount of publicity you're getting is not worth the attention you're getting for the thing you're doing. That's in my opinion, that can be the case. That's what I think the case is here. But again, this is the third or fourth episode that I've talked about these cards, so maybe they're happy. Maybe Panini or maybe the people that made them or they're happy about that. The other topic, it's a little bit of a slower week. Well, we had series one, so obviously that makes it not slow. But in terms of news and stuff in the hobby, it wasn't like super crazy. But something that the Mike from Filth Bomb Breaks, who phenomenal guy. I met him at the National a couple years ago. He's super nice. I did some videos for them again. Like I said, they're very, very, very nice guys. They actually had a little bit of a controversy recently where they posted an image of like the Steph Curry superfractor, and for like a couple hours, people were like, "Wait, I think they pulled the card. Like the cards, it was a card that has been missing or whatever for since the 2009 release. Which who knows where it is? I mean, it could be in a landfill for all we know. Like it could be that somebody opened up the pack in 2009, 2010. Steph Curry was not who Steph Curry is today, and they just got rid of the card. I don't really know. But so he posted a very interesting video on TikTok that I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a shout out for, talking about like how tops can incentivize how they can incentivize like making a like rainbow, or like how they can incentivize things for collecting all of the cards from a certain set. And it's very similar to a topic that I believe it honestly, it might even have been last year at this point that I was talking about this, talking about the buyback program and how I feel like there should be a way, or there could be a way that they get cards and take them back, because and I'm sure they don't want to do this. This would be more of like a philanthropic endeavor, I think is one way to put it, based on the concept that I'm about to kind of describe. Is like, if they are the ones that are getting the cards back and then they're giving them out to, I don't know, people, or they're giving them out to children's hospitals or stuff along those lines, I do think that that would be a decent idea. I think figuring out a way to incentivize the base cards and figuring out what to do with them, I think is something that, you know, a lot of people have written articles on like what to do with your base cards if you pull them. And series one is a perfect example, because like I went to Walmart, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, on release day, and I grabbed a blaster, and I didn't really, I mean, the rookies, I wasn't honestly, I didn't really know many of the rookies. Like I knew like a couple of the players. But also the weird thing that I thought about series one was that the colored border that they used on the cards actually was like a shiny, foily kind of texture. And also, some of the cards, the last names are in black font, which, like, if you're not putting it up towards light, which maybe that's the point of the design or the kind of the concept of the card, if you're not like putting it into light where it's like reflecting, you can't even read the person's last name. So I don't know if that was a mistake or if that was on purpose. But Mike from Filth Bomb Breaks, he was saying that they should incentivize people to somehow collect a certain type of set. And then I don't know. I think the concept was that if you send the cards in, you will then receive like some sort of special one of one. And I mean, they do this with the home run cards. I think that is a cool concept. I think combining Topps has a bunch of cool concepts that I feel like if they could combine somehow, the buyback program, for example, the home run challenge cards, I think are really cool. If they could combine these and figure out a way to incentivize people in collecting full sets, I think that would be really cool. And I think similar to what I talked about with this expanding the buyback program like months, or it might even have been a year ago at this point. Like I said, I forget which product I think I was talking about this concept with. But like doing some sort of like portal where like you like almost like ComC, where it's like you can see all the cards in whatever set, whether it's top series one or whatever product they want to do it with. I think series one would probably be the best one for this kind of concept. And if you collect all of like, doing it where if you collect all the cards in your portfolio, you get some sort of reward. Like you get either first, I don't know, you get first pick at some sort of product, or you get like a discount on some sort of product. I think figuring out how to, and this is similar to the first off the line and how I think maybe they need to tweak the concept a little bit. Just figuring out a way to get get discounts and get things in the collector's hands at the price that Panini wants them or Topps wants them to, without there being some sort of just with a barrier of entry. That's sort of where I think we could get. Like if there's a barrier of entry to buying some sort of Bowman Sapphire or some sort of set that is a nice set that like you have to have, like hypothetically you have to have collected in your portfolio, or that's what I think ComC calls it, or like a portal or some sort of vault or some sort of thing. If you collect every single one of a certain set, you get the first dibs at whatever card it is. And I think this is also kind of similar to a concept I was talking about with like Tops Now, where it's like if you buy all the Tops Now of a certain player, you get like you get first dibs, or you get first call at some sort of rare one of a certain player or a certain team. I think that yes, I think the concept that yes, every collector should have the ability to buy certain products is correct. But I think unfortunately we've gotten to a point within cards where there needs to be some sort of barrier of entry for collectors. So that way they're the ones that can get these products cheaper. And that could be Purism, that could be any, any first off the line product, that could be any Bowman, that could be any Sapphire product, that could be anything. But I just think there should be some sort of way where the consumer has the control of what they're paying for a certain price. Like if they are collecting, that should then give them first priority, or it should give them a, like I said, a first priority or a discount or some sort of thing. It should give them the opportunity to get products at a price that are like just whatever the MSRP is, like whatever, which for Panini, it should be fairly cheaper, or I don't know. I think it's overall, I think it would be a good idea. And I mean, even if it's just you get a card at the end of the year if you collect all of the sets, I think that would be cool. I think also the sending of the cards back to Tops, I think, is one way to, I don't know, it is technically one way to incentivize people to get more product. Like if you could only send in the cards and that's how you can put them into your portfolio, if you couldn't like buy them digitally like you can with ComC, maybe that would change things a little bit. But I think overall there should just be a way that there should be a way that you are rewarding collectors by giving them more cards. Like not like, because it feels like collectors and set collectors, they're just making things harder by including tons and tons of parallels and including all these different types of cards that you have to collect. So one, making things easier for collectors to collect the cards and giving people an incentive, I think, is actually a really good strategy for Tops or Panini, whichever company would think about helping collectors, I think, a little bit more than they have been.